All right, welcome back to Testify, Strength and Conditioning, which just happens to be the world's greatest gym located here in Omaha, Nebraska. If you don't know me, my name is Phil Meggers. Also, if you do know me, my name is still Phil Meggers, and we are talking about 3 ways, 3 habits, 3 tactics that you can instantly improve your deadlift. Now, a couple things that I'm not talking about here, all right? I'm not talking about using chalk. That should be obvious. If you're not using chalk, you are a fool. Unless, of course, you've never been told that you're supposed to use chalk before, in which case, I'm telling you, make sure that you're using chalk. I'm not talking about your grip. In other words, I'm not talking about moving from a regular double overhand grip to either a hook grip or a mixed grip, also known as an alternate grip or a switch grip, or even straps when it gets heavy. If you are not doing that, if you are allowing your grip to limit your deadlift, it makes me want to cut out my heart with a spoon.
Why a spoon, cousin? Why not an axe?
Because it's dull, you twit. It'll hurt more.
So make sure you're using the appropriate grip. I'm also not talking about setting your back in rigid extension, because on the deadlift, that's something that pretty much, hopefully, everybody is thinking about doing anyway. What I am talking about is the bar's position. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, what do you mean, Phil? Isn't the bar just hanging in the hands? Isn't that the bar's position? Yes, that's true, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bar's position specifically over the middle of the foot and in 3 aspects of the lift. The 3 aspects are on the descent, in the setup at the bottom for the next rep, and then on the ascent as well. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Phil, you kind of covered like the whole lift there. Isn't that the whole 3 parts? If that's the voice that you use when you talk to yourself, I think you might want to see somebody about that. And B, yes, those are the 3 parts, which means there are 3 places for you to mess this up. And boy, do we see it all the time in all 3 of these places. So let's cut to the chase real quick and talk about how to fix these 3 places, these 3 aspects of the lift. You want to make sure that you're keeping the bar over the middle of the foot because it's the most efficient way to do it. That bar starts to drift forward, which is the most common error, or perhaps backwards of the middle of the foot. It makes it a lot harder. You know this when you're hanging on to a jug of milk. It's a lot easier when it's close to the body. You start holding a jug of milk out here, it's much heavier. It's actually the same jug of milk, but it's a lot harder to hold. It's a lot harder to kind of keep up in the air, if you get the idea. The same is true of the deadlift. So we're going to start from the top down. We're going to start at the top of the rep. In other words, we're going to assume that you already know the 5-step setup for rep 1. We're going to assume that you already know stance, grip, shins, chest, and pull or drag for step number 5. And if you don't know it, we'll link to the how to deadlift video below in the description, all right? But at the top, the key part is you cannot let your knees get in the way of the bar on the way down. You need to reach back with your hips. You need to bow to the floor. If it helps, and it very often does, look at the middle of your foot. Sight the bar into place. So as you start to lower the bar, get your butt back, keep your knees the heck out of the way, and bow to the floor and set the bar down. If your knees are an obstacle on the way down, that's a problem because you need to set the bar down right over the middle of the foot. It's harder to do it if you don't do it this way. Aspect number 2, the actual setup of the next rep, right? So you've got the bar over the middle of the foot, and this is where people who do a very good job with the 5-step setup on rep 1 start to mess things up. They start to wonder, well, what do I do with my hips? Well, what do I do with my shins, with my knees? Do I need to start moving the bar all over the place? No. If you set the bar down over the middle of the foot, you've got everything in place for the next aspect of the setup, all right? Now, if you didn't set it down over the middle of the foot, that's the first thing you got to do. You got to fix that. If you set it down in front of the middle of the foot, which is the more common error here, then you got to get your shins back out of the way. You got to straighten your knees a little bit, raise your butt up, and move the bar back to the middle of the foot. Then, once the bar is over the middle of the foot, you're still using the 5-step setup. You're just using the last 3 steps because stance and grip are already done for you. So all you have to do is step 3, bend your knees to bring your shins to the bar. Step 4, squeeze your chest up to set your back in extension. And then step 5, pull or drag. The key part is it should be simple every single time. It should be shins, chest, pull, shins, chest, pull. It's that straightforward. Now, the last aspect is on the ascent. You're kind of going to get 2 tactics here. So here's your bonus one, all right? You want to keep it over the middle of the foot on the way up as well. Now, the first part of that is you need to push the floor away. When you start the movement, you need to think of it not as a pulling movement. We just call it a pulling movement because it's hanging in the hands. That's the only reason we call it a pulling movement. But you need to think of it as a pushing movement. In other words, your legs are responsible, your knees are responsible for straightening right away. They're not going to lock out right away, but they need to straighten enough that not only do they give you elevation, they contribute to the upward upward movement of the bar, but they also get the heck out of the way of the bar. So they're not going to get a lot out of the way, but they have to clear a path for the bar. So that's tactic number 3A, let's say, all right? You've got to push the floor away. Make sure that your knees start straightening right away. And then tactic 3B is your arms are also responsible for keeping that bar over the middle of the foot. As long as your knees are straightening, you've cleared a path over the middle of your foot, but your arms, specifically your lats, the muscles of your upper back there, are responsible for keeping that bar close. But you don't ever think about a muscle group while you're moving, all right? Don't think about your lats. You just think about keeping the bar pinned to your shins. So simply tell yourself, pin it to your shins. So bar over the midfoot on the way down, during the setup, and on the way up. Hope this helps you get stronger and live better.